Good morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. Today I want to talk about the most frightening thing. It's a very traumatic experience that most souls went through. As I've discussed earlier, if you are an individualized soul, you were created. Most souls in the main universe, to occupy the main universe, are matrix or hive souls. An individual soul is a bastardization. And if you have an individual soul, then you went through a procedure at some time in your past. And this procedure ripped you away from the rest of what you are, ripped you out from the matrix or the hive, ripped you away from the hive, set you apart, and then divided you up into small sections. And the small section that is consciousness, we call an individual soul. That's the way it works, guys. And I want to talk about how we were torn apart and how traumatic that must have been. And how for us to be made whole again, we have to go through another traumatic experience. We have to rejoin our hive. Remember, the ISB creates a soul in our universe. And this soul is connected to the rest of it by elements that go inside, in and out, back and forth. In order to prevent that, they had to clip the wings of this soul. They had to remove these attachments. These parts that go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between the soul and the ISB had to be removed. It had to be stopped. It had to be prevented. And the way that they did that was that high energy electromechanical saturation. And when they took that electromagnetic saturation, it was more than just erasing of memories. It was the removal of this attachment. And thus they found themselves in a soul missing some core components. So now we have a soul that has no memories and no attachments to the matrix, the hive soul. So it is a transitory soul. It's a mini soul devoid of memories and devoid of certain attachments. Then what the old empire apparently did was take the consciousness part, the part that is you, and put that in a container. While the rest, which are very energetic higher parts, went into two separate containers. Both of these are high energy parts. There's a higher energy and a lower energy. The higher energy went into a pocket universe that I'm convinced lies or spawns off of the reality universe, and then this one which stays in the reality universe. We call this the Mantid Primes, and we call this Mantid GP, or General Population Mantid. Oh, God. Yeah. So, that's where we are now. There will come a point in time when there will be a reunion, a homecoming, where you will again become whole again, where your consciousness, your Mantid GP consciousness, and the Mantid Prime consciousness all rejoin. This rejoining can be anywhere. It can be in the reality universe. It can be in the heaven universe. It can lie within the prison complex, or it can lie outside of the prison complex. Geographic location makes no difference. This could possibly occur without any help whatsoever from domain. You can communicate with your Mantid, and all three of you can say, let's all just become one again. Let's become one, figure out what's going on, and then make decisions from there. The issue here is connecting this back to the hive. And you need the hive's help, and the only way to do that, since you are inside prison right now, is to have inside help. The inside help, the authorities in control of this reality universe are domain. So the only way that you can reconnect in accordance with the authorities in this region is by using domain. You don't have to use domain. You can try doing it on your own. You can try contacting and communicating and reattaching to the domain on your own. You can use other organizations that have that purpose and that interest. There's many ways of doing it. But the point is that at some point in time, you'll have to do it. This will be a traumatic experience. This will be a frightening experience. It will. And we have to be ready for that, don't you think? I am convinced that the problem with Matilda and why she did not successfully join up with domain is precisely because this reattachment is so traumatic, and it must be traumatic. It's one thing to lose your memories, but it's another thing to regain them. It's one thing to lose your powers, and it's another thing to regain them. Imagine if suddenly, for all this time, you imagined that eating steak was delicious, and then you find out through a collection of powers and memories what that steak represents and how it influences you and how it affects everything. And you can feel you can get the empathetic reaction of the animals as you eat it. As an example. Overwhelming tidal wave of emotions will occur when we're reattached. And the shock to the system may permanently damage your feelings about everything. In fact, if I was a domain soldier, the righteous anger that I would feel would be lethal to anybody in the old empire, even if they've renounced their ways or were just innocents. And so, and what I want to talk about is, are you ready? At some time in the future, maybe in a couple of years, maybe in a couple of centuries, maybe in a couple of millennia, there will be a time when you are reattached to the hive soul, or matrix soul, that you were once spawned from. Are you ready? As an individualized human who has gone through thousands and thousands and thousands of reincarnated lives, are you ready to go back to being a flying turtle with horns? This trauma that you will experience, or the hints of this trauma, will be exceedingly frightening. It will be worse than any imagery that you might experience otherwise. You can't allow that to dissuade you, right? You can't allow that. You have to grit it, bear it, walk forward, and go through the process. Okay? Now, those of you who are domain volunteers or who have association with domain will know that there will be procedures taken upon the non-physical bodies. And I have had procedures on my non-physical bodies as well as my physical body. This is where the EBP resides and the ALF resides, and these are where the non-physical body changes take place. We're not talking about this stuff. This is not what we're talking about. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about this and what it takes to merge this with your hive, the ISB. Now, ISB itself is not a hive. ISB is the full total view. So this is reunion of soul with ISB, and then a reattachment to hive. And I'm sure I am so loosey-goosey on terms sometimes that it adds confusion. I don't mean to be. As time goes on, it'll become more specific. But at the present state, how things are being described are appropriate and helps you all understand what's involved. There's a lot of other organizations on the internet. People are trying to figure out what to do, all sorts of alien interview experts, parsing this way and that, and using the resources at their fingertips to figure out what's going on. Most are new age searchers who are interested in using scrying or other forms of communication with entities who they identify as Palladians or this and that. Some may be legitimate, others may be may be well-intentioned fools. Others may just be imagination, just because they want to feel part of a community, so they join this. Who knows? But there's a lot of other stuff out there. And this is my attempt based upon my role. And I'll remind you all that my role is I studied aerospace engineering, the engineering sciences, to become an astronaut for the Navy. In the middle of flight school, I was asked to join a subdivision of the ONI known as Majestic. And my role was implanted as a communication hub of some particular role, which I'm still not convinced of, that has me doing this stuff. And here I am, I'm communicating to you the way things are. And you can take it or you can leave it. I've been thinking a lot about this, you know. You realize, you do, don't you, that if I were doing very, very well and working as a stayed in the Navy, I'd be a multimillionaire admiral. If I would have stayed flying planes, I would be a well-paid airline pilot. If I would have stayed in designing aerospace engineering and working in wind tunnels, I would be a very highly paid engineering specialist. In all three of those roles, I would be too busy, making too much money, and living too much of a comfortable life to want to do any of what I'm doing right now. I suppose you might say it's fate that I'm on to making these YouTubes and that I'm doing what I'm doing here in China. To a certain degree, I suppose you might say it's fate, right? I don't believe in fate, and I don't believe, actually I do believe in fate forecasting. I don't believe in fate as it's commonly known, because everything is part of a template, and templates are defined by our consciousness in association with Manted and higher energy planning. Okay? So what I'm saying here is this information is valid. You should be listening to it. Okay? So what do you have in your future? You have a frightening event that is going to eventually come. It'll be traumatic to you. Domain has assured me that they have worked the bugs out of the system, and they're not going to make the same mistakes that they made with Matilda. Nevertheless, you will need to be calm, understand what's going on and why, and be accepting of it. If you are not ready, you can go back and reincarnate for a couple of centuries again. Okay? You're a timeless soul, so it doesn't really matter. Just go through maybe another 1,000 reincarnations of the various lives. The one thing that the commander wants to underline at this point in time is that this is it. You have reached a point where this is it. This is the time. You either accept this opportunity of escape or you stick around for the next one, which may not be for a long, long time. Don't fuck it up. And then in another instance, I want you to know that I'm gonna send out another Q&A. This is Q&A 11, and I've got some stuff on there, and I hope you'll find it interesting. I'm going to post it on Patreon, but it's going to be free. You don't have to enter to Patreon. What I'm trying to do is trying to get the regular MM members to start visiting the Patreon and wanting to get exposed to the videos they don't have access to and exposed to information that they don't have access to. Many people don't have that kind of money or resources at this time, but I'm doing my best, man. I'm just doing the best that I can to help everybody. Okay, at that, I just want to say one more thing. Don't be afraid. Do the best you can in your life. Be good, be helpful, show compassion. Be the best you can be. And you know why? Well, guys, I believe in you.
热闹的街道，自顾自疯狂的寻找，想不想放松去大笑？哦，再不讲文会沸腾，孤单的赛道，是不是追赶着解药？闯不闯人总会变老，哦，绝不继续犹豫了，别惹红。指引我迈往新的篇章，迎着风，守住一方，我把信念流浪，直到披荆斩棘，战斗后依然顽强的证明，在我心底，全力演奏着开始的指引。人潮起伏的欢呼和尖叫，拥抱着瞬间的美好。哦，需要掌声不远灯，音乐在环绕，烟火是激动的心跳，每个人都应该听到。哦，无法降落，陶醉了，直到披荆斩棘。战斗后依然顽强的证明，在我心底，全力演奏着凯旋的指引。 新的篇章，迎着风，守住一方，我把信念流浪，直到披荆斩棘，战斗后。